Welcome everyone to today's Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here because, well, we are breaking down a massively important update from May 3rd, 2026, regarding the high-stakes standoff between the United States and Iran. We're going to look at this complex, rapidly evolving situation, specifically through the lens of recent remarks President Donald Trump made to reporters down in South Florida. The dynamics at play right now are just fascinating. We're literally watching the situation shift back and forth between looming military action and incredibly complex diplomatic negotiations. So we're going to unpack exactly what is happening, what's actually at stake here, and where this decades-old tension might be heading next.
Okay, let's dive into this. To help us impartially navigate all of this, we've got a quick roadmap. First, we'll cover the strike and the warning. Second, we'll look at a potential leadership vacuum. Third, we're digging into the new 14-point peace proposal. Fourth, the hardline conditions for peace. And finally, the price of the past. Section 1, the strike and the warning. Escalating tensions in the Middle East. Now, as you know, context is absolutely everything when we're analyzing geopolitics. These May 3rd warnings, they definitely do not exist in a vacuum. You've got to remember they're layered on top of 47 years of really deep U.S.-Iran grievances. But even just looking at the very recent past, these new remarks follow right on the heels of February 28th. That was when the U.S. and Israel launched a joint military strike against Iran. Understanding that a physical, kinetic strike happened just months ago is absolutely crucial to grasping the real weight behind the words the president spoke on May 3rd. And honestly, those words were incredibly direct. While speaking to reporters right before hopping on Air Force One, President Trump explicitly left the door wide open for further military action. He warned, and I quote, "If they misbehave, if they do something bad, it's a possibility that could happen, certainly." The key takeaway for us here is that the administration is actively maintaining a strong posture of military readiness. The threat of resuming those strikes isn't off the table at all. It is entirely conditional on Iran's future actions. Moving on to Section 2, a leadership vacuum, assessing Iran's internal status. The language used to describe the situation right now inside Iran was pretty stark. The president outright characterized the nation as decimated. He stated they're having a hard time figuring out who their leader is because their leader's gone. That assessment points directly to a critical leadership vacuum within the Islamic Republic. So from the perspective of the U.S. administration, they are dealing with a government that is internally fractured and, quite frankly, struggling with some fundamental questions of authority right now. Yet here is where the situation gets deeply paradoxical. Despite all this internal chaos and the really severe pressure coming from the outside, the administration clearly acknowledges that Iran is actively seeking a diplomatic resolution. Even without clear leadership cohesion, the message coming out of Tehran, according to the US anyway, is that they want to make a deal, which tells us that the desire for a negotiated off-ramp is very much alive, even in the middle of all this instability. Now, what's really interesting about this next slide is how it transitions us into Section 3, the 14-point peace proposal and the diplomatic back and forth. So what we're actually seeing here is a highly structured back and forth. Previously, the United States had presented a 9-point proposal that outlined their framework for peace. Well, in response to that, Iranian media outlets are reporting that Tehran has countered with a brand new 14-point peace proposal. And because direct communication channels are so fraught right now, this elitist response was actually delivered to the United States using Pakistan as an intermediary. So think about that. As the president stood in South Florida warning of potential military strikes, he was simultaneously preparing to formally review this exact 14-point plan. And remarkably enough, there is some actual forward momentum to report here. Impartially speaking, despite all the overarching friction and the very public warnings of military action, the president told reporters that things are, quote, doing very well with regard to Iran, and that talks are actually progressing in some respects. It's a classic dual-track approach, right? You've got heavy public pressure combined with active, progressing, behind-the-scenes negotiations. Section 4, hardline conditions for peace, the non-negotiable demands. The U.S. has placed some incredibly strict demands on Iran, and earlier proposals have been universally rejected by the president, specifically because they failed to meet these exact criteria. The three main pillars of these hardline conditions are pretty clear.
First, Iran must entirely give up its nuclear program. Second, they have to reopen the Strait of Hormuz to free trade. And third, the U.S. wants to eliminate Iran's remaining missile production capabilities. Basically, if a proposal doesn't adequately address these 3 points, it's just a complete non-starter for Washington. And this brilliantly illustrates why that second condition is so important. Let's look closer at why this specific geographic choke point matters to literally everyone listening right now. The Strait of Hormuz isn't just some local waterway. It is a vital artery for the entire planet's economy. To put that into perspective, roughly 1/5, that's 20%, of the world's total trade in oil and natural gas typically passes through this single narrow strait. So securing and reopening this passage, it's an absolute economic imperative for global markets, which is exactly why it's a foundational demand in these talks. Now, returning to that first condition, the nuclear program, the president's rationale here is rooted in a very stark characterization of the threat. He reiterated that Iran simply cannot be allowed to obtain nuclear weapons, warning that lunatics with those kinds of capabilities could strike Israel, the broader Middle East, and even Europe. This level of existential fear is precisely why the U.S. remains so strictly and unapologetically focused on total nuclear disarmament and wiping out those missile capabilities. Which brings us to our final section, Section 5, the price of the past, historical grievances and skepticism. Shortly after he spoke to those reporters, the president took to Truth Social to share some of his preliminary thoughts on this new 14-point proposal from Tehran. He flat out stated that he can't imagine that it would be acceptable. And you might be wondering, why? Well, because he views this entire situation through the lens of history. He argued that Iran has not yet paid a big enough price for what they have done to humanity and the world over the last 47 years. This reveals something huge. The hurdle to peace isn't just about agreeing on current nuclear limits or shipping routes. It's really about trying to overcome nearly half a century of deep historical mistrust. Which leaves us right here. We have a decimated Iranian leadership that is actively seeking a deal, a 14-point proposal currently being passed through back channels via Pakistan, and a U.S. administration that says talks are progressing while simultaneously keeping its finger hovering right over the button for renewed military strikes. So the ultimate question we have to ask ourselves as we watch all of this unfold is, with talks progressing, but military action still very much on the table, will diplomacy or force dictate the next chapter in the Middle East? Thank you so much for joining me for today's Explainer. I really hope these insights helped clarify the incredibly complex web of threats and negotiations at play right now. Stay focused, stay curious, and keep learning.